Hi there.
So she's going to be moderating a little bit the panel, but maybe we leave it free. I think there were some questions from Manfred, maybe for Nikki, and going back to this very comprehensive, holistic way of approaching the disease, which is a multifactorial and complex disease.
Okay, I can start. It's because everything I'm saying now will be so redundant and kicking in open doors, because it was mentioned already a couple of times that our bodies, they belong together. Last century, we have basically played largely pathology, dissecting the body into different areas, the brain, the gut, the kidney, the liver and heart, and so on. It belongs together. So that is one key area I think we need to focus on. We need to be more holistic. A bit what Roger and also I think Tom was mentioning. These are fantastic approaches and I totally believe in them. However, will they work when the mental hurdle with consumers and patients, the motivation to use them is limited to, I think it's either the ones who know already, or the ones who are quite affluent, who don't mind to spend their money on this. But you need to have a certain awareness, and I think here it lacks, because if not, the diabetes type 2 numbers, they would not increase year after year worldwide. The Alzheimer area as well, 93% I think of the American population is metabolically insane. So that's another area. So as you probably know, and was obvious, I strongly believe in prevention. So nutrition is part of the prevention. It's not the only thing, but without nutrition, everything is nothing. So and here I think we have a big gap. What we are discussing here is basically trying to find solutions for an obsolete science. If I look, for example, and again, everything is connected. If I look at the government-supported website, when you have high levels of LDL, first of all, it doesn't explain that there are two types of LDL. That's one thing. And then it says you should not eat any saturated fats, total BS. You shouldn't eat cholesterol, total BS, because the body will make cholesterol, but it's the up-to-date version. And then you should take statins, where 1 out of 200 to 700 patients will only benefit from the statin. However, about 1/4 have to succumb to the side effects. So here it's obsolete science, and we repeat things, in particular in nutrition, what is wrong for 40 years, and the things get worse and worse. So how can we reach that mental part? How can we approach a holistic part? You mentioned it, Nikki, as well. I mean, you have to, and that is the patient feedback I'm getting as well, you have to become your own health manager. If not, nobody will help you. You get, and I think it was Roger who mentioned it takes years until you finally get the diagnosis, which is a starting point to do something about. So preaching to the converted, I think everybody of us here could give the same comments. What can we do? What can we do?
I would like to pass the word to Aleksandra Jani. She is a very knowledgeable individual, but coming from the industry, but not a scientist by formation. And maybe she can give her perspective. She's, of course, very healthy, but she might have also colleagues, family, friends that are not as healthy, and that would need to embark into a prevention plan as soon as possible.
So that's very nice of you, Lavinia, and thank you for the invitation. And I mean, to all of you, it's been a delight to listen to your super interesting insights. And I would not basically to like tell you anything, but I have a lot of questions for you. So I'd like to go back to Birgitta, and what she said at the beginning. So at the beginning, she said that she believes in the world without Alzheimer's, right? And, you know, if we could go like with a quick round about like, what do you think? You know, like, yes, no, it's like a little bit about like who's optimistic, who's pessimistic, right? But I'm very curious about what you think. So maybe Roger, could you start?
It'll never happen. It's a stupid thing to even pretend it might do. What I hope will happen is it'll become an annoying chronic disease, not the catastrophe that it is now. But it's not going to go away, not until certain things happen. And even after that, I think it's here for a long time yet. Answer to the what was just asked, I think there are 5 things in the way of what's happening at the moment. One is governments never take long-term view. They pretend to, but they don't, because they're only interested in their next 4 years. Academia is stuck in a status quo. It's been 25 years of investigating amyloid and tau with no great result. Very little around the periphery that's trying to challenge it. It's beginning to. Never underestimate the power of the food industry. A lot of what's going wrong is in their hands. Research doesn't get through to primary care, so anything that's innovative goes round and round in circles. And lastly, as you know, we all know, people are just passive until they're ill. And you know what we're talking about is educating people to live very differently, and that's a big uphill thing without the other 4 things coming into play.
Okay, thanks very much. Amy, what do you think?
I would like to have a more positive tone Dr. Bullock, because I'd love to believe there's a reason for hope. For me, you know, studying this disease is personal. So my dad had early onset, died of Alzheimer's at 57. So when you're in this potentially early onset kind of familial situation, you hope that something could be done.
Thank you. Nikki.
Yeah, I have so I see all the sides. Like Roger, I appreciate the sort of like pragmatic look at it, right? Which is there are some significant challenges that we face to get to the point where, you know, something like a precision approach or like preventative approaches that we already know could help certain people could be implemented. And what you said about change is really true. You know, there are always significant delays to big paradigm shifts. And if you look at medical history and scientific history, that tends to be true. I think one of the longer ones was the misunderstanding over how the human circulatory system works, the cardiopulmonary exchange, which is like 1,000 years in med schools teaching the wrong thing, like 2 separate systems. And so we can be really wrong for a really long time, but then there have also been some incredible shifts that have happened. And you know, it's funny, I have my copy of Mukherjee's book open next to me because I was debating on sharing this quote during the meeting, but I'm going to share it now because it's pertinent. For any illness to rise to political prominence, it needed to be marketed just as a political campaign needed marketing. A disease needed to be transformed politically before it could be transformed scientifically. And in his book, he's talking about cancer and cancer funding and the creation of the National Cancer Institute, which is a huge machine, right? And arguably advances in cancer have taken place that have changed the trajectory, you know, with targeted immunotherapies and CAR T therapy and all of these treatments that are now becoming available because of a huge amount of resources and also because of a precision approach to understanding one's unique cancer. So I tend to be optimistic that it's possible, but that we really need some bold maneuvers in order to make it happen. You know, that we have to start small too, just like I come from industry. So industry, the tactic in pharmaceuticals is carve out a patient niche. You know, you don't need to treat everyone with your medication, but is there someone that you can treat? And I guess that's the question. Like Amy raised the issue of, you know, the familial Alzheimer's, right? Or individuals that may have 2 copies of ApoE4. If it's determined that those individuals are more vulnerable to certain infectious agents or nutritional deficiencies or have certain immune characteristics that, make them more vulnerable. It's possible that, even approaches like ours, like we're not claiming that we think everyone has an infectious disease that has a case of dementia, but we know they're out there. We don't know who they are. So I think groups like ours and others that were here on this call today just have to take those small steps in the right direction. And yeah, it's daunting. And a lot of it, we all work on it. We know that it may not be in our lifetime that we see meaningful change.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikki. Emanuele, what do you think?
I'm optimistic, but again, I'm a scientist, so you also need to be realistic. So it's a long road to do, but then I think that we can, let's say, win this fight. The good thing, as Roger said, is that we have to educate people from from when they are a child. So if you really teach the good habits to a child, then you grow up with, let's say, the right information and the right steps to do, like exercise, I don't know, good health, good diet, and all the different kind of risk factor that we can fight to avoid many diseases like diabetes, which then are linked also to older age diseases like Alzheimer's. So if you can avoid one, maybe it's a good investment to avoid other diseases when you are older. So we can do something.
Thank you. So now, we having this, general question in mind, like what do patients and families need? I would like to specialize them a bit to each of you. Amy, so I spoke some time ago on a podcast with Antonella Statuccione-Chatra about Sophia, an Alzheimer patient, very active. She wanted to get into any clinical trial, basically, to help find the cure for Alzheimer's, having in mind it was a genetic Alzheimer's that she had, and having in mind her two daughters, that they might inherit it as well. So, let me just ask you, and naively do so, and purposefully so, when someone, she was diagnosed at the age of 39, right? And, well, when can we expect to find the root cause of Alzheimer's? And then what do patients need, right? If you could follow up on this.
If what patients need. I mean, what patients really need in the solution to a true root cause, I think, goes to what Nikki said, is breaking out of silos. To date, a lot of the Alzheimer's research has been done kind of from a very neurocentric view, and as Dr. Bullock said, has been very focused on initially A beta by the majority of the field, and then tau slowly broke into that. But I think what's critical is, reevaluating with an open mind and with, more collaboration with unique perspectives to try to really figure it out. I don't know if it's, I am a pragmatic individual, so I don't know if it will be possible, but it's the only way to try to take a new, fresh approach that's totally out of the box, that can't be the same old, going on forever if this will be solved.
Nikki, following on your dramatic personal story, thank you for sharing it so much. Do you think it can be in the future, that with Alzheimer's, as it is now with stomach ulcers, after Helicobacter pylori can be treated, there are not so many ulcers right anymore? And then again, what do patients need and families?
They need precision. They need their clinician to know what things could be on the radar. And Vic from UMethod talked earlier today about some of the things that are available at laboratories today bundled using his organization, that a clinician can order and find out, do you have nutritional deficiencies? Do you have issues with your lipids? It's a pretty comprehensive approach, although I'd argue missing some of the infectious components that we know could be very impactful too, especially in light of some of the other things that you measure. So I actually, I am optimistic to the point that I think within the next 7 to 10 years, there could be breakthroughs where we understand subsets of patients, and we have effectively a diagnostic, an intervention, and then later a preventative for some of those people. Because there are things that we know about some of the genetic traits that lead to, or could promote certain diseases, that also relate to the microbiome or the pathobiome, which is sort of that tip toward disease, where your passengers may not be helping you, or at one time the passengers were fine, but something changes about the host with aging, that now the scales are tipped toward an inflammatory state, or maybe a helpful passenger to what biome does. There could be organisms that get wiped out inadvertently, during treatment for something else. So invariably, there are so many groups doing such cool work right now. And maybe that's my perspective, just being a consortium person and talking to tons of people is what I do. I am optimistic about the next 7 to 10 years for subsets.
Awesome. Emanuele, you just mentioned that, people should be educated. Do they want to be educated? Like, who's on board, basically what groups are, on board here, on this mission?
I think we should start from children. So if you play with them, it's a game. So you can teach everything and very serious things and difficult things to children at school. So it's always the attitude and the way you want to teach something. So we can do difficult things in a simple way. Sorry?
Manu, when they go to medical school, right? When those generations go to be trained, that's another piece of it, right? Training doctors on, what is in the literature, not just what they hear from the pharmaceutical companies and industry. What is commercially available is very different than what is available in general.
Yeah. But I also mean about the lifestyle. So since we can avoid many things, so if you teach to your kids simple things now, they absorb the information and they do automatically like walking. Then for them, it's totally normal to do, to do that specific thing, and it doesn't sound strange or difficult. So it's like riding the bike.
Hassan, go ahead.
Yeah. So from the root causes, the understanding we got from the root causes, we are we decided from January onwards to present and to attend conferences across schools and also universities. We will not discuss technical aspects myself. I will get in board doctors from the CHUV or HUG here in Switzerland. But I think the main message here from the prevention, how we can prevent getting into the conditions that give you more chances getting into this disease. That's the focus for the next 6 months. So we are targeting about 20 to 50 schools from January to May to have a chat, discussion about sports, yes, sport challenges, yes, pushing the limits, yes. For what? For the perspective to beat the disease, not to get into the conditions of the disease. And this is supported by the short videos we collected for the movie. And when we display these videos from the different doctors who attended this movie, that we are pleased to make a kind of a prevention message. And if that can help, then we can help the subject, basically. Yeah, I think prevention is the word. Yeah.
Thank you, because I actually just wanted to ask Roger about prevention, Roger, I love your optimistic, in that case, twist to Dwayne's talk about, following investments into small molecules, like, redirecting the funding. So your app, I even tested your app before I interviewed your co-founder on the podcast. So it offers a pretty holistic approach. But, Aleksandra earlier said that the patients are not tech savvy. The second thing, they often lack motivation. So that's one side. And the other side is like what you said, 40% of dementia cases could be mitigated. What do patients need, and what do families need from your perspective?
Okay. I was interested in what you say about teaching children. So 40 years ago, I spoke to the UK government and said, why don't you teach first aid in schools to protect A&E departments? And they never did it, and the A&E departments can't cope with the demand. So, for me, that's a Warren Buffett situation. What we learn from what do we learn from the past? Well, the only thing we learn from the past is we learn nothing from the past. I think what patients need is, I think we need to revamp public health and educate into a lot of the things that we know are true. I mean, a lot of patients know they eat badly, a lot of patients know they should exercise more, all the rest of it. It needs to become more policy, it needs to be more made, things need to be made more available. I think the big thing patients need is society not to make them different. As soon as you get dementia, that's it, really. I mean, and society ought to be a bit more forgiving to older people than that. Because actually a lot of the problems of dementia outside of the biology and the science and all the rest of it is isolation and loneliness and not being, not getting the services they deserve. So I think society's got a role to play. And I think they should be given advice that may have clinical impact. If you know that a diet preserves cognition, then you should be told that every time you go to the doctor. It should be on the television adverts. It should be everywhere. The waiting for a magic bullet that gets rid of the abuse you've done to your body for the last 40 years is not the answer. They need more advice. They need cognition discussed at the visits. If you're diabetic, you need to be asked about how your memory is. You need more advice. It's not just about drugs. There's so much more that can be done, just at basic core level. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the motivation to do anything if you're not sick is not good. I mean, tech savvy, I'm not worried about that. I mean, when we spoke to people with dementia in the Alzheimer's Europe group, the patients were using half a dozen apps to try and do things throughout the day. I mean, it's amazing even how 80 plus people, and of course we talk about 80-year-olds now. They were 60 when the iPhone came out. They're not all old people who've never had an education, and in 10 years' time, I'll be nearly 80. So I hope I'll be able to manage apps and stuff still there. So, old people now are not old people that we have a stereotypical image of. So I think we just crack on. I mean, but I do think, the science, I hope it comes up with answers. There's lots of rationales why it would. We spent 25 years plugging around with amyloid, which is probably an immune response. So we're taking away the cure rather than or it becomes a problem. More critical thinking, probably new faces coming in. Look at the research world in Alzheimer's. Most of them are 80. I mean, we just need a breath of fresh air, not to get despondent about failures in drug trials. Push governments more. If Dwayne says the money for pharma for neurology is being taken away, let's campaign to get it put in the right places. I think there's a lot that's optimistic, and a big part of that, as you say, and push back to me, is trying to get the public to look after themselves. And how do we do that? But it's worked before. It's worked before. Everyone knows about heart disease. Unfortunately, they all got told not to eat saturated fat, which has probably killed the generation. But once you get it right, the message gets through.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, Lavinia, I'm conscious of time, so I'm handing over to you. I'm just curious about, like after this wonderful, really, symposium. Like, where do you see the possibility for collaboration here, or maybe you have advice for your colleagues here?
Well, I think collaboration, and I think Nikki, she's really a pioneer in this, really trying to create value based on human capital and people who share the same mission and the same vision. Clearly, when we started in 2018, it was a grassroots movement, but it was a very intellectual movement. And now we understand that more and more people, lay public, wants to get involved. And Hassan has kind of felt this drive himself, coming, of course, he's an educated individual coming from the tech world. But yeah, I think we really need to be more inclusive when we talk about brain health and trying to really putting our mindful vision of how do we want to construct our future. And I think that it's very important. I mean, I'm almost 50. I think there's also some other people who are beyond 50 here. How do we see each other going forwards in the next maybe 40 years, 50 years? We're going to live very long. We have the luck of being healthy, having a very high hygiene, and yet there are those diseases. I think that we need to plan very carefully our future. Our retirement, which is not going to be a retirement, it's going to be a second career. Keeping healthy, keeping as independent as possible. And I think that the example, this really incredible force that Brigitte, with her knowledge she brings about, is an example for everyone. And breaking this barrier, breaking also the fear that resides in us going forward, and just think about your second career. So maybe I will just share the last slide, because I need to thank, of course, also the agency that has slideshow that has allowed also for this years to so it's the Swiss, and people in Switzerland know it very well. It's the Ministry of Innovation. But I really want to thank everyone for sticking around. This has been a wonderful conference. I think this inclusiveness that we have heard, and this also attempt to convert what is sick care to healthcare, or even to consumer healthcare, which is close to the population, is great. And I think that we're moving much faster than what we were doing before the pandemic, really with a strong commitment of resolving the issue, understanding, and just being out and really doing this together, no matter from which background. So I want to thank everyone. All the conference is going to be online, so I'm going to post this on YouTube, and we will repost each of your talks separately, so people who couldn't be at your seminar will be able to see it later. So thank you so much, and have a good day or night.